Good morning. I cannot see all of you equally because of the light that comes in the back of some of you. So, my name is Nora. I'm Egyptian, and I've been living in Berlin since 7 years. Do you know something about me, or I have to tell the story of my life? No? It is somehow in the lecture also. So I work with dance and performance, but I'm also a researcher. I work academically as well, and I also work with theater of the oppressed, which is a methodology created by Augusto Boal in Brazil long ago. And most of my work intersects with feminist approaches, with the criticism of racism. So this will be a bit loaded with terminology, but it's very easy. It's not my native language anyway, so. Okay. So I thought that with my task to speak to you today, when you are somehow preparing to enter the professional world of dance and performance, this turning point from studying, learning, and into creating your own dance, your own career, and also exploring from the different places and histories you come from, where to belong. So I thought to talk a little bit about how I experienced arriving to the dance field myself, but also understanding how it is related to finding one's own body language that fits with one's own identity and experiences, and also how to recognize the dynamics of the field, what exists there politically and culturally and economically, and how all this is related to choreography and performance. So I have three main questions which guide this examination. Who am I, and why I want to dance, and how I want to dance. And I think the way I have tried to construct it here, it's totally intersectional, so I will interweave many things together, like it's not a straightforward narrative. So to talk about my experience in creating dance from the embodiment of identity and lived experiences. And this is versus dance that is a replica or an imitation. Dance that is recycled and reproduced or treated as a sort of acrobatic moves. Dance that works on colonizing the body. And for me, colonization is a bigger word than dominating the territory, the land. It's also about dominating the knowledge. And this is much more even dangerous than just dominating territory. So I use the word colonization and decolonization a lot, and I try to link it to forms of liberation. Liberating pedagogy, education, knowledge, and the body as well. So the first thing I met was obstacles. Not freedom. It was restrictions, limitations. And the fact of recognizing that I want to arrive to the dance field, it's a very exciting passion for me, but I feel that my body is colonized already. So how is my body colonized? It is first colonized by patriarchy, by a history where the female body is subjugated and domesticated and even infantilized. These are social and cultural and political facts, but they have direct influence on dance, on what we are expected to embody and perform and represent. And they have direct impact on choreographies as well. A history where women and children belong to the patriarch. They are his possessions. They are robbed of the ownership of their bodies and identities to become property of the patriarch. The patriarchal history and system of thinking puts me in a lower rank of humanness compared to the male. It defines me as less in everything and paints me as a sexual object or as a sacrificing mother. My sexuality is defined and projected and owned by the patriarch. And this is all related to stage as well. I am the concubine in an Orientalist myth, if I want to dance in Europe. I am the exoticized Arab or African female. I am an object of cultural tourism, visiting the favorite topic of the victimization of women. Women as weak and disempowered entities. On stage, I have to abide by the craft of the patriarch too. My teachers are supposed to be patriarchal as well. They hold the key to success. If they're not patriarchal, they don't hold the key to success. They are the gatekeepers of any artistic career entry. They are also the teachers most of the time. They teach me how to represent my gender. They direct me and they choreograph my movements and also finance the stage and rule the theater houses. And I think this is a cross-cultural fact. So it's not only like this in Egypt or in Deutschland, it's global, I think. They tell me also that I should speak softly as I'm speaking now. And they tell me how to embody also my cultural identity. They shape my dancing body as an object that reproduces the same patriarchal system of values and images. They teach me about the norms, what is normal and what is not normal. The norms of beauty, of body size, of body language, of agility and ability. They inform me about how to develop my career, how to define my boundaries. They set the borders of my knowledge. So some things I imagine that they are not even possible to do, or that they don't belong to dance, because it's an education. It's also an education that tells us what is dance and what is not dance, what is more artistic, what is less artistic, what can be staged and what is more for community dance. So, because I also don't want this to become too long of a monologue, so maybe you can help me and unfold this. Somebody can help, maybe here. Somebody, can you catch? Good. I cannot throw very well, but it's good that you catch well. And I want to ask you to take notes on one paper, notes that I can take away so I can learn from your input and develop myself, so I can also learn from the lectures. And the other paper, so 2 papers for each person, and the other paper is for you to take notes, maybe responding to some of the questions I will be asking now. Somebody needs pens? Yeah? Unfold. And yeah. And if you don't find anything that you can give me to take back to learn from, it's also okay. You can keep both papers for yourself. So I will be also saying those questions across the whole text. So also respond to whatever feels right for you. So how to get ready to bring in your identity and perspective into your upcoming professional practice? What would be one action to take? One step, one idea. One action, one step, one idea, one emotion. And because I entered and exited from the field several times, so I asked myself this question several times, in several countries, actually. So what would be the first action or step to enter in the professional practice? Maybe the answer is related to where do you fit? Where do you feel you fit? Or if you have to create your own space. And for me, these questions and what you write down is maybe the most important thing today, because it means that maybe you will take something and apply it to your own journey. And this is what matters, actually. What makes you unique versus the objectification of the dancing body? Why am I not a replica? What is unique about my identity and body and experience? So I will continue. I will skip some questions. Maybe we go back to them later. So there are several new roads now with critical discourse to re-examine the field of dance, to understand how the dynamics work. For me, it means that we are in a phase of transformation, of positive transformation, where there is topics that have not been spoken out before. To speak about which bodies are admitted, which dance forms are recognized, and why. How to create genuine choreographies that can make the identity visible. How to tackle socio-political issues from the perspective of dance as a transformative power. How to work differently for a different future where transculturality and migration is a fact. We live in a plural society, in a global plural society. We can talk about translocalities as well. There is no way we can understand the society as being one culture, made of one culture anymore. This is totally in the past. And also there is a lot of movements of protest and change that make the marginalized cultures become more visible. But what does transculturality mean in relation to dance? To the forms, to the techniques, to the understanding of the body, what body is. The relation between physicality, emotionality, and spirituality. These are long roads of re-understanding the body and therefore re-understanding dance as well. Re-understanding also the significance of the sensorial system within the dance. Touching and touch in dance is becoming a big topic now. The topic of healing rituals as well. Togetherness, especially after the pandemic. So if I keep thinking in those directions, I start to understand that I'm not specifically obsessed by progressing my career, but by finding creative and artistic and human ways to develop myself as a human being through dance, with dance, in dance. And this is a different story. Because for the fields that are totally based on competition and concurrences, there are very specific ways to go through those dynamics and to win a place. But I do not feel these ways are totally respecting our humanness and dignity. So I prefer to find and to look for another path, another journey. It's a more difficult journey, and maybe it doesn't bring a lot of money, or maybe it doesn't bring fame. But it brings more rewards in terms of self-empowerment, self-respect, and also, I believe, impact, socio-political impact that lasts. So another question would be how to continue with integrity and passion in the face of competition, and then overall environment of mistrust. And the word mistrust comes very late to my mind, because I lived a lot of years with a very innocent and romantic idea of the performing arts as an ideal utopic place. And I was part of a community that strengthened this feeling, so that the disillusion came quite late. And mistrust can really deserve one whole summer school on its own, because it's a social behavior, it's a pedagogy, and it's made on purpose to create division. And it's also something that has direct effect on dance, where the health and survival of the bodies is based on how we trust each other in the studio, in the training, in the rehearsals, and how we trust a choreographer. We entrust that person to our bodies, to the safety of our bodies. But sometimes we can meet people who do not respect this responsibility. So we need to understand the boundaries and how to protect ourselves. And I think by doing so, we may contribute to changing the knowledge about dance education. One more question. So from the last sentences, I hold on to the word of responsibility, social responsibility, and to understand from there how to compose, how to shape movements that also do not only express our identities, our safety and health, but also speak out the surrounding realities of oppression. So this is our social responsibilities towards our environment. How also to facilitate making spaces for muted identities around us, for marginalized communities, or maybe we are the marginalized communities. How to bring in this political understanding into choreographic practice. What does it mean when we talk about body alignment? what does it mean when we talk about speed and agility when we are dealing with oppressed bodies that are traumatized. And this has a direct effect on the physical memory, on the sensorial and nervous system, and how movement is produced. And then how movement triggers back more pain or not. Is it okay, this style of talking and thinking? Is interesting? Just touching base before we go too far. So for me, the living reality of the body, whether dance or not dance, is that the experience and the memories and the traces, everything we live, are stored and processed and present within dance. Then, if I want to dance my dance, the dance of my homeland, the dance of my own body being my homeland, which is baladi dance in Egyptian. It means belly dance, how it is used in the West. I need to transform my educated dancing body from the Western techniques and shapes and body lifting to another corporal identity. I need to decolonize my body to reroute my dance. I need to re-explore my history. So, when I was educated in the ballet and modern, basically ballet as a child, there is a sense of lifting the body and having grace, everything straight, lifted. And this corporality, this embodiment, this posture and attitude is coming from a way to draw the beautiful body. And it's also coming from histories of classicism, of royal courts, of producing ballet as an image of perfection. Now, to come to cultures and societies that live in overcrowded places and overcrowded cities, and who live on a daily basis with sexual harassment and violence and oppression, this body does not exist. But there is another body that exists. This body can be more drawn to the floor. And here it's a physical action, but it's also a psychological action of holding on, grasping to the floor. Psychologically, to the roots, to feeling stable. Like standing in the metro and it's shaking and you need to root yourself or hold on to something. The bodies can also feel heavy. And maybe this heaviness is not because of the body size, but it's also psychological. Maybe the trauma is an extended, multi-layered, transgenerational trauma. But there is also an understanding of the articulations of the body that can go very in detail. And that every single ligament has a possibility to move in very different and diverse ways, and not always going with symmetry, not always going with aesthetics, because in reality, the reality is not so aesthetic. The reality is not beauty in that norm. So we can see movements that are, from the Western perspective, deformations or strange articulations. But for those bodies, it's in the flow. With baladi dance, I don't want to say belly dance, with baladi dance, and baladi means my country, my homeland dance, there is a lot of pelvic work. Maybe you know this from the commercial nightclubish cultures. But from my research and long writings and books and stuff, this is a direct statement against the ownership of the body from the patriarchal system. And the shakes are a way to destabilize and to own the body and the sexuality. Those shakes are actually shamed in the institutionalized forms of dance. And then it triggers immediately the idea of club dance or exoticization or erotic dance. But this is because of the colonization of the knowledge of the dance. This is not the origin or the history of the dance, which is in itself an intersectional place for colonization, patriarchy, and racism, and which is in itself a form that is hybrid and transcultural, and that is highly based on the migration of the dancing body. Maybe you can find it in the book later. I don't have to tell the whole conclusion. So just to be able to practice the dance that is part of my reality, to practice the reality of my body in dance, I have to decolonize my body. I have to unlearn a lot of things. And by unlearning and decolonizing, I need to find a foundation, a solid ground of how to judge myself. To judge myself from my own eyes. But even maybe my eyes, my gaze towards myself is colonized by the others, by how I should please the others. So how to transform my body while transforming my dance and dancing it as my own dance and my own signature of contemporary dance. I transform myself while transforming my dance, while confronting the prejudice and the racist and sexist gaze. I experience my dance then as a protest, as an activist performance. I use my body to offer my peers a learning experience. I unfold my trauma of rape and disability to evacuate the domination of shame and harm. I unlock gigantic possibilities for choreographies interwoven with vocalization, with emotional articulations, and with audience interactions and participation. For me, it's a loaded paragraph, and it has a lot of input from unexpected places. But to realize that to reclaim one's own perspective towards one's self, I also have to embrace all the good and bad and to respect them. And to understand that even what is regarded as weak or unnecessary or irrelevant must be part of the dance. And here it becomes a way to unlock new possibilities for creating dance. It feels like creating a new pedagogy of the liberated through the very practice of dance and its performance. Then I meet other people, communities. Sometimes they are called in Germany communities of migration, of refugees. And later, those communities can become a way to find refuge together. And this is a tactic, actually. It's a tactic also to move away from the institutionalized stage dance world into other areas where dance still exists, although it's labeled and inferiorized, like community dance, or dance in intersection with pedagogy, with youth and children, dance therapy. And in all those places, I feel there is possibility to liberate the body and to find new contexts and communities of belonging, where we can later come back to the stage with a new and fresh understanding of what is doable. I trained myself to decolonize my body from an education where I was taught to endure pain, to compete by how much pain I can endure versus my peers. An education that is resulting from the pedagogy of dehumanization, looking at the bodies of dancers as objects for entertainment or products in the market. We are educated to be obedient and silent. And this is not metaphoric. And I find just to develop the practice of teaching and training to not impose on dancers to do exactly what they are told, but to transform it or to get inspired from it. I find it a very empowering practice and necessary. And also to speak. To speak and maybe even say long monologues on stage. If we get more and more experienced in the silence, we mute our intuition. It becomes a practice of muting intuition. We mute our needs. We disconnect from the signals of our bodies. We stop listening to the signs given by our nervous system, to the alarms of the body, that we need to stop or harm will happen. And harm is sometimes beyond repair. We also stop hearing our peers. We refrain from solidarity, from empathy and compassion, and hence we all become weaker together. And we are forced to continue with the rules of the system that we cannot confront or beat by any chance. طيب, I want to give some really hope and positive thinking. Maybe we arrived to that in the last 5 minutes. So, I look at ballet where I was first taught to professionally dance. And I find it's the representation of the history and of the taste of another body. I loved the pain and I starved myself to be that ideal body. I think we all know about anorexia nervosa and bulimia. To have that foreign grace and to be always straight and silent. I guess many of us just love their oppression. They identify with it until they can no longer perceive that it is oppression. They fall in love with their oppressor or perpetrator, with their dictator, so that they serve their own dehumanization, and this is how the cycle continues forever. It continues through the weapon of pedagogy. Now, to bring in some of the theater of the oppressed from Brazil, so I will mention Paulo Freire in his foundational text of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and it's a fantastic text. I advise you to read it. The divide is one of the tactics of the oppressor, to take out the power of the oppressed and preserve his power. Divide and rule, we know the expression. Divide among the collectivity, or even divide within one body that becomes divided between body, emotions, and mind. Hence, unity is our tactic in the face of the divide, going for a holistic understanding of dance, of the self, of the history, a healing practice that becomes implemented whether in the studio space or while just walking out in the street. Hence, creating collectives, going for crowdfunding, seeking spaces of co-working, peer-to-peer advising, sharing resources and knowledge, talking about what we experience, speaking out of harm so that it does not repeat for others, warning from certain practices and systems, announcing red flags, or just being there to listen, to watch with a loving gaze, to hold space for each other, or maybe even to get out of our bubble of dance and intersect and interweave with initiatives with people who do not work with dance directly, but who understand the body in a different way. In order to liberate dance from an oppressive system of governance, a system that is based on ableism, classicism, sexism, and racism, ism, or to simply liberate dance from a pedagogy that may lead to instrumentalization and traumatization. We need to claim the equality of all dance forms and practices, of all dancing bodies, beyond cultures, localities, and time. Therefore, instigating a global initiative towards the re-understanding of dance as in itself a diverse and empowering culture of wisdom and justice and transformation. Because every time I dance the same dance, I dance it differently. Because there is no same dance, and because there is no people who can execute the same movement exactly, repetition does not exist. Dance is an art of transformation. I am not a product of artificial intelligence. I'm not automated. It means that I learn from dance that transformation is a law of nature, is a law of the body. Physiologically and psychologically, how some disease, sickness, and wounds may heal naturally without even interference. So that learning from the wisdom of the body and from the law of the body and the law of nature is one way to look again at dance, where the body also has its own way of representing justice and equity, where maybe it's not so necessary that the right side does exactly like the left side, or I can shake the left hip less fast than the right hip, and that this is natural. This is acceptable. To start understanding these practices and wisdoms of the body as positive practices, then they're not obstacles. Then I don't need to react in a bad way towards my own abilities. So dance as a lesson about transformation, and dance as a transformative power. There is also lessons in the body about balance, about connection, about how the body is impacted by speaking to others, by connecting, by looking, by touching. That the communication with the spectators or with the peers is not just a communication, it's a huge experience. And it has impact on developing our knowledges of the self and of the community. The emotions flow naturally. They also impact the physicality of the body and transpire into voice. Its articulation, the breathing, and the gaze. Everything is connected and flowing. To block, to disconnect, to divide the body is to apply the same philosophy of oppression on that singular body, to deprive it from its strength, sensitivity, and holistic being, and therefore lead to its subjugation and loss of direction, disturbance of its own intuition and wisdom. Exactly like systems of dictatorship educate the bodies to be tools and instruments, to apply the orders of the patriarch or ruler, to lose one's own inner voice, the distinction between good and harm, the loss of self-worth, and therefore many horrors can be executed by those who are even oppressed because their higher conscience is no longer coming from their own minds and hearts. Now to the questions I left before. How to connect your own personal holistic knowledge to your dance knowledge? What could be a gate or a way into practicing that? Or do you already practice that? How can this experience of wholeness, where everything is connected, the past and present are connected as well, come into dance? Is it what is called biographical performance, documentary performance, or is it dance as a place of archive, the body as an archive of knowledge and experience? What would it be? Looking at the lessons from women dancing in the streets in the recent revolution in Iran, or taking off the veil as a revolutionary performative and symbolic act, looking at women dancing in the squares of Egypt in the face of systematic rape and sexual harassment, in the face of massive rates of female genital mutilation. These dances not only occupy the public sphere against many dangers, they also and gradually reproduce themselves into digital compact dance acts on social media, so that their significance grows globally, infiltrates the visual references about the stigma of their repressed bodies and identities, and become a form of transcultural and translocal movement of feminist sisterhood. They become digital territories of resistance and of solidarity with their own performativity, and they support or inspire the idea of a migrating dance expression. A lot of lessons to learn outside of the stage. The dancing bodies here become protest, revolt. Dance become a threat to the regime of patriarchy and dictatorship. It becomes a public act of the liberated bodies that reach the peak of their endurance and sufferance, arriving to a moment of dignity that is near death. I realize that dance can decolonize the body and consciousness and shake them off. Unite the dancing bodies protesting for human dignity and freedom, and revolutionize a whole territory and public image of obedience and control. This is what dance, among other things, can do for the public sphere. And I like revolutionize the public image of obedience. Even in the face of continuous interruption, manipulation, and state control of consecutive dictatorial regimes, dance is a protest for us to learn from how we can revolutionize our overall field of dance practice and choreography. Professional dance, stage dance, dance education, mediation, research, and to re-understand spectatorship, participatory and interactive dance, their impact on creating notions of togetherness, human bonding, reconciliation, and ownership of the public sphere. How to bring transcultural revolutionary feminist actions onto the understanding of embodiments of dance and what dance could mean, but also what dance can bring to the whole world, the world of political transformation and revolt. Moreover, what dance can bring to the field of trauma healing, transforming triggers through movement, reshaping emotional and physical memory to the new choreographies of healing so that the body can perform its own new memory of empowerment, and maybe even dance therapy can be a new source of developing choreographies and staging unspoken histories of harm and trauma. From the many forms of cultural activism, we can learn a lot. From the pandemic, from the wars, from migration, from the critical pedagogy that can replace the pedagogy of oppression, the pedagogy of the pre-designed normativity and normality, where learners are regarded as empty vessels to be filled with an existent and predominant knowledge. And these are the teachings of Paulo Freire, this what I just mentioned. There is one more page specifically about Paulo Freire, but I can maybe skip it. It talks about the pedagogy, how it is created to control people, and how also it is shaped towards a culture of silence. And so I will stop here, and maybe we can have like 5 or 10 minutes to speak together, or you can maybe give me back some of the papers if you want to share something for my future learnings. Thank you for listening. Yes. Or breathe at least. Paulo Freire. Yes, F-R-E-I-R-E. And Augusto Boal is the methodology of theater of the oppressed. The text from Paulo Freire is the pedagogy of the oppressed. And my book is Dance of the Persecuted, or Tanz der Verfolgten, translated into Deutsch. Yes, Mattes Sites, Berlin. Teresa, you don't want to have a seat? You were standing all the time?
Yeah, because I thought I
Okay.
needed to go out.
Okay. So, anything you want to ask me, or stuff you want to share, or how do you feel? You don't answer me? This is the culture of silence. Please speak. Please say something. Yes.
Thank you so much for all this. And, I think I can relate to a lot of like everything you're saying, and also like, but it's so difficult sometimes when we are under institutions. I mean, you know, and working with institutions, and when you have this body that you have, and I'm also from, like, geographically we are very close, and then you have a lot of I don't know, it's not just cultural, but anyway, so the obstacle that I'm facing sometimes, that yes, I have things to say, and this is my dance, this is the way I want to do, but then sometimes it happened to me that you just become instrumentalized again for exactly, for the thing that you're trying to revolutionize or point out. You become again an instrument for this colonization, the white gaze, the Eurocentric perspective of dance and contemporary dance, and I don't know. So I'm having my yeah. Anyway, would you like to say something about it in your practice, in the way you are situated, you know, what you do, and or for young choreographers, dancers like me, as a dancer, I feel sometimes you know, the same identity that I'm, you know, and as a choreographer with my work. So I feel like, how do I break this?
What is your name?
I'm Elvan.
Elvan.
Yes, it's.
So I think to assume responsibility for your passion and choice, for your self-dignity and worth, and don't cooperate with those who instrumentalize you. And if you don't know it and it just shows up in the middle of a process, you can always leave. Take care of contracts, what they say. And what I did for myself is that I decided to start my own independent company. That was long ago in Egypt. And there was actually similar struggles in Egypt. It's a global culture. Yeah. And to start one's own company, it's a way to to create your own space, to have your own freedom, but then it's a lot of sacrifice. And then it's also, it has financial compromises, and it's a long road, but I think it's one, maybe the only possible road to have autonomy. And then it's very rewarding, because then you create your own body, your own dance. And along the way, maybe you find people similar to you who share the same struggles, and to unite together to create this solidarity. Then the responsibility can be shared. But I think also to have faith. To have faith that you don't need to lose yourself or to become an object, because I think this is very harmful, and it's to have faith.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes.
For instance, like also everything we talked about, and thank you for your advice. You know, like we have to stand up a lot to revolution and decolonize, and to generate energy, to speak up, stay true to yourself, and because you're continuously facing. And I don't know, sometimes I get tired from like speaking up.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, do you also have, do you always choose to, sometimes I choose to, you know what, I'm not gonna negotiate anymore.
Of course.
You know?
Of course.
Yeah.
We cannot be enslaved by our goals, and we need care and healing. And if healing cannot be part of our professional practice, then we can make a pause. And I think this is something we learn a little bit from the pandemic, and then we forget it. So we try to remind ourselves all the time. And Teresa will tell us if we are exceeding the time, not to...
You have a shorter break, but I think...
No,
I mean,
we can have a couple of,
5 or 10 minutes,
maybe two more questions.
2 more questions.
Not to influence your break for the care.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. And then we take another question from the other side. So one from you, then one from the other side.
Okay,
Or maybe the front side. Mm-hmm.
Okay, from this side again then. I wonder with whom you are collaborating with now, in terms of like, because you talk about finding the like-minded people, and I was curious about your current situation, with whom you are.
So it's a little bit unconventional. I'm doing a lot of workshops. I'm teaching a lot, and sometimes from the workshops, sometimes it's like with professional dancers who want to try something new, or who have similar experience like myself, or I'm doing community dance with bodies that are not even admitted on stage. And from there, I find my collaborators. And I try to attract those identities to the stage. So I'm doing a lot of solo work as well, but my solo work is also a way to find and to expand the knowledge and to attract more people. So my last ensemble piece, Rerouting, And it's made with a cast of 8 people who do not all identify as professional dancers, and each of them comes from a totally different country and culture. And I felt to occupy the stage in Berlin and to present this as stage dance with this totally diverse experiences and relation to dance is a revolution. Because we also put trauma as one subject for the choreography. And also to deal with that in a choreographed way, in a collaborative and choreographed way, also changes a little bit the stigma, and to bring in vocabulary from belly dance, ballet dance. So that's my way of doing it. But my collaborators and peers are bigger than those who train or perform with me. I feel there is, at least in Berlin, quite a group of people who are really working with dance and activism. So we are like magnets to each other. Maybe I meet some of you later in Berlin, who knows? Yes, one more question. Da, 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 da.
I feel like it's very overwhelming to when you start to like question yourself and your background and your thoughts on dance and your identity in dance or in general. And I come from a probably very different background than, for example, you or like anybody else. And it's so hard to or where to find a start of what comes from me, what is coming from my identity, my being, and what is coming from the things I internalized and learned, and from like pedagogy or the oppressive system, like what is my own and what isn't, and how to separate that.
I feel maybe what I could answer better is where you want to go, not how to separate between what is your own and what was imposed on you, because they also get mixed, as you explain, but to think more about where you want to go, about the future. What are your wishes and dreams and passions, where you feel there is an exciting place or journey to go through, and where you feel resistance, or you feel you don't enjoy so much. And I think also time helps us to realize more where we want to go, what we want to be, how we want to transform. And the transformation is not, in my understanding, is not a disruption. It's not like, okay, I stop here and I will leave everything behind, or I separate. But it's a way of re-interweaving what we have, our knowledge, towards going to another point in time and space. And this reorganization, redeveloping, enters into the transformation with the guidance of a goal. And I think dance as a personal and intimate practice, not as a professional, as an intimate practice, can be a catalyst. I think just to move and to ask the body how it wants to move and why. What moves you? Maybe it's a nice exercise. You're welcome.